Welcome, sixth graders, to your video lesson on expressions and equations. What are they and what are they not? Your learning target today is that I can identify the differences between expressions and equations. Make sure that you have the notes template out, either the paper version you printed, picked up at school, or you are using the split screen option with the PDF found on Schoology. Let's have a great time. Maybe stop and think, what do I already know? Okay, let's talk about some vocabulary and some examples of what these vocabulary words mean. So an expression is a mathematical phrase that contains numbers, variables, or both. It also would contain operations. Expressions never have an equal sign. Here are some examples of expressions. Maybe we have 14 divided by 7, two numbers and an operation. Maybe we have 2 times the value of x. Notice that's multiplication. That could also be written as 2 times x. We could also have maybe 5 times the sum of 12 and 2. Or maybe we have a letter G plus 25 minus 7. Those are all examples of expressions. Notice none of them have an equal sign. An equation is a mathematical sentence that has two expressions that says that two expressions are equal. Kind of like when we talked about proportion was two ratios are equal. An equation always has an equal sign. Here are some examples of equations. So maybe instead of just 14 divided by 7, we have 14 divided by 7 is the same as 2. Maybe instead of just 2x, we have 2 times the value of x is the same as 12. Or we have 5 times the sum of 12 and 2, and that is the same as whatever 90 minus 20 is. And then we could also have that G plus 25 minus 7 and say that that is the same as 7 times G. So what you'll notice is that in expressions, our variable could change, or we might not have one at all. And then in equations, our variable, if we have one, is going to have one exact thing that makes it true. So here we know that an algebraic expression or equation involves a variable. So it becomes algebraic when there's a letter in place of a number. A variable is that letter in place of any unknown or changing value. So these that I'm going to box would be considered algebraic equations or expressions. These are algebraic expressions and equations. Kind of a vocab heavy lesson here, but these are different parts of equations and expressions. Expressions and equations are made up of different parts. So we just talked about a variable. A variable is a letter that represents an unknown amount. For example, in the equation 2b plus 7 equals 15, b is your variable. In an equation, your variable should have one value that makes the sentence true, makes them both equal. A coefficient, think co, right, pair it up, is a number multiplied by a variable. A coefficient is written immediately in front of the variable. For example, in the expression 9 times n minus 1/2, 9 is the coefficient because it's right next to my variable. A constant is a term that contains only a number and no variables. For example, in the equation 7 minus 6/10 times t, 7 is a constant. 7 won't change because it's not being altered by a variable. It's on its own. Term, we just learned. A term is a part of an expression or equation that is added or subtracted. For example, in the expression 3x minus 9 plus 2 divided by y, each separate part that's separated by addition or subtraction is a term. So look at the example below to see how these parts come together to form an expression. So this whole thing together is an expression, and within that expression has parts. It's kind of like when you're writing a sentence and you have different parts of a sentence. You know, you have your beginning, your end, different types of words, right? And so some vocabulary there. Make sure you have some side notes written down. Okay, so using that vocabulary, let's try to identify parts of expressions and equations. Our first job is that we are going to underline the variable of each expression or equation. So I might flip back and remember that a variable is a letter in place of an unknown number. So I'm going to underline x is the variable, y is the variable, and k is my variable. Maybe you're ready to try on your own. Next, you're going to circle the constant, the number that is not attached to a variable. So in this case, 12, that 3, and that 5. Box the coefficient, the number that is directly in front being multiplied by the variable. So 5 is my coefficient. 9, or we could say -9, is my coefficient. And 4 is my coefficient. Okay, so now, not just the parts of them, but which ones are expressions versus equations. And then highlight afterwards to see if any are algebraic. So I know that expressions do not have an equal sign and that equations do. So I'm going to start by circling my expressions. 3x plus 4. 2 times the sum of 3 and 4. Or 3 and 1, sorry. I see equal signs. Oh, and then 20 minus 4 times 3. Next, I'm going to box my equations. 2y minus 5 times 3 should be equal to 1. 5 plus 10 equals 5x. 3 plus 2 plus 1 is the same as 6. 2 times 4 plus h equals h plus 8. 3 times 4 is the same as 2 times 6. 12g is the same as 4g plus 8g. 10 plus 3 is the same as 6 plus 7. And 7 times the difference of y minus 4 is the same as 7y minus 28. Okay, so now I've separated the expressions, the non-equals, to the equations, the two expressions that are equal to each other. Now I'm going to highlight which ones are algebraic. Algebraic meaning there's a variable involved. So I see an x here, so this is an algebraic expression. This here is an algebraic equation. We have another algebraic equation. We would have to find the value of y, or x. H, we would have to find this is an algebraic equation. We see a variable, an algebraic equation. And we see a variable down here, algebraic equation. So I had one algebraic expression there, and I could create another one quick just to say I did. Another algebraic expression might be 15 minus y plus 6 minus x, and I could have two different variables too. So now your job is to complete the IXL skill to a SMART score of 100. You can do it. You are going to master this skill. So it is 6Z4 or search code GCQ, and it is just you deciding is something an expression or an equation. Do your best. You are awesome.